Hello, everyone. Hi, this is Rahul, your Filmi Baniya. And today we are in a very, very interesting discussion. And this discussion subject is the movie Animal Crackers, which has just released recently in India on Netflix. By the way, it's an amazing film. It stars Sir Ian McKellen, John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, the great Rambo, Sylvester Stallone, and a host of great actors. And today we are very lucky to have been joined by Scott Sava from Tennessee in the United States. And Scott is the co-director and the originator of this movie. Very, very big warm welcome. Namaste to you, Scott.
Very nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Great. Superb. So today we're going to be asking some fan questions and then some more, we're going to probe about Animal Crackers with you. And with your permission, I would like to begin with a few questions.
Of course.
So Scott, just tell us about how Animal Crackers as an idea of, it sounds like a very, very unique idea at the core. How did it come to your mind and what was your journey with this idea?
As with pretty much all of my comic books that I've written, it came from my kids. We were in the backyard eating Barnum's Animal Crackers, which is a fun red box, has a little string on it and all the different animals. And we were eating, the boys were maybe 7 or 8 at the time. And I just had the idea, what if when you eat a lion cookie, poof, you become a lion. When you eat a giraffe cookie, poof, you become a giraffe. And the kids, of course, loved it. So they were running around eating different cookies and pretending they were that animal. And I wrote the idea down, and a few months later, I turned it into a graphic novel. At the time, Animal Crackers was one of the books. I had written a dozen books for a company called IDW. And they had published.
They had published very, very popular. It's a global.
Yeah. Yeah, and they had published a bunch of my books, but at the time, this was maybe 2010, I think. They didn't know how to break into the children's book market, and so we kind of ran into a situation where they weren't able to pay me the money that they owed me, so we parted ways. So Animal Crackers was a finished book that just kind of sat. And about a year later, I was talking to my buddy Kevin Grievous. Now, Kevin created the series, the series of movies Underworld with the vampires and werewolves and Kate Beckinsale and whatnot. And he actually played Ray's the werewolf in the movies. And he said, "Why don't you turn your story into a movie script?" And I said, "Well, I went to art school. I don't know anything about writing a movie script." He said, "I went to Howard University and I was a microbiologist. I didn't know anything either, and I wrote Underworld." And so he really just kind of encouraged me to take a shot, and I did. And within a little bit, Harvey Weinstein saw it and he loved it. And fortunately, that relationship didn't work out because Harvey Weinstein wound up going to jail. But we wound up getting money to make the movie, and the rest is history.
Well, this whole process sounds like a movie.
Yeah, it really is. People tell me that the making of the movie is far more interesting than the movie itself.
There's this old Indian saying that the journey is far more enjoyable than the destination.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. And just tell us a little bit about your co-director.
Tony Bancroft. So yeah, when we first met Harvey Weinstein, he says, "I love the idea. I love the script." He says, "I can't sell a movie with you attached. You're nobody. You've never done anything. You're just some guy in Franklin, Tennessee. I need some big names." And I had met Tony Bancroft years ago, and we had worked on a couple small commercials together. And he had left Disney after doing Mulan. Tony, if you don't know, Tony Bancroft, he was the animator of Iago in Aladdin. He was the animator,
I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah. He. I'm trying to go chronologically if I can remember. It was Iago in Aladdin. He was Cogsworth Actually, I'm sorry. Beauty and the Beast came first. Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast, Iago in Aladdin, Pumbaa in The Lion King. He then directed Mulan, and then after that, he was the lead animator for Kronk in Emperor's New Groove. So he's got this wonderful, wonderful director, and he offered to come on board as my co-director, and we just had an amazing time. And he taught me so much working on the film.
And I think it sounds like a very interesting collaboration between two individuals, wherein it sounds more like a startup idea, you know, when there's somebody who has a little more experience as a veteran, and at the same time, you have one guy who's super dynamic with a great idea. And if you put them together, you have, you know, a very unique enterprise in the future.
Yeah, you know, since everything was my first time, and as any person doing something for their first time, their ideas are different. They're unique. They want to try different things that they haven't seen before. And Tony was saying, well, Disney does it this way, and there's a reason why they do it, because it works. And so he would always try to bring me back to a more traditional form of storytelling. And, you know, sometimes I was stubborn and I would want to just try it myself and go in a direction. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But Tony was really good at becoming that mentor of a friend and saying, okay, I'm going to give you guidelines and you can take it from there.
Superb. So our next question is actually a very interesting question. What is unique about this story, and do you think it has a resonance to the current socio-economic environment of the world as it is now?
I think the family, one of the things that Tony and I don't want to say we argued about it, but when I wrote the script, it originally was your typical hero's journey. It focused on Owen. And when Emily Blunt came on board, we really realized that Zoe just wasn't a very important person in the film. She was just the wife that just kind of came in and said a couple lines, and that was it. And this was before Me Too. This was before you know, I really grew as a person, and I realized that I wasn't writing female characters to their full potential. And I drew upon my relationship with my wife, who went back to work for 2 years to make sure that we were able to get this movie funded. So she and I are equals. We're partners, and
a big hand to her from us.
Yes, yes. And she really, you know, Zoe really became that personification of my wife and how that relationship worked. And I went back and I rewrote Zoe to really take those chances. She's the one who really wanted to go back to the circus when Owen was too afraid to do so. She's the one who has that heart and has that faith, and she's the encouraging one, and she's the one that, and even at the end when they're battling Horatio, she's the one who stopped. I mean, they do it as a family. Even little Mackenzie helps out. And so the film became not about that one hero's journey. It became about family, and family really became the core of the entire film. And we keep reinforcing that family. And we even, we started making the red noses very symbolic of when you're following your heart and when you're not. So when Owen decides to go to work with Woodley after the proposal, he takes the nose off. When Chesterfield says, you know, you just inherited a circus, Owen takes it off, he throws it to the ground, but Zoe picks it up and she puts it on her nose. And so it was very symbolic of following your heart and family. And so I hope that those are the traits that are remembered for the film, because that was really important to me and my relationship with my wife.
Wow, fantastic. And it sounds like a very, very frank and honest reply. Seriously. And what are the next question we have is, what are the universal themes that the movie explores in its story?
Universal themes? You know, that was the thing that was learning from Tony was, he was the one who explained what the hero's journey was, because I didn't know. So I wasn't doing things traditionally. I don't write traditionally. I kind of write from the heart. But I think it would go back to the family is I would hope is a universal theme, and following your heart, I would hope is a universal theme. For me, what I try to do is I try to create characters and a world, and then put a situation like magical animal crackers and see how those characters interact within that world with that situation. And so at least the way that I see it in my head when I'm writing it is the characters really, it's almost like programming a world and AI. And, you set up the world, you set up the laws of the world, and then you set up your characters' personalities, and then you let them go off and you let them tell that story. And it's a bit chaotic, I think. But I never went to any kind of writing school or anything. And so for me, it's just, I worked in video games for years. And so for me, it almost feels like that is a very, and it's exciting for me because I'm watching, as I'm typing it, I'm watching it unfold. Oh, my character wouldn't do that. They would say this and they would do that. And so you really, it's like when I paint, especially with watercolor, when you put that paint down on that paper with the water, you don't know what's going to happen. It's different every time. It's up to the temperature in the room. It's up to to gravity and how much paint is on there, how much water, and it just flows onto the paper differently every time. And I think it's that surprise that you get when you do that. And I feel like I got that with the script too.
Superb. And my son, who loved your movie, and by the way, he fell in love with Horatio's character.
Thank you.
And it's like he looks like Elvis, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, Sir Ian McKellen, somebody like that, sounding a lot like, looking like Elvis. So my son had this very unique question. He says, "What can children learn from the story of Animal Crackers?"
I want to say follow your heart, because again, that is really something. But I think the other thing, if you look at Owen and Zoe's relationship, you'll see that they completely disagreed, completely opposite.
Yes.
Yet they never fought. And I love that relationship. And I think you can have a disagreement. You can believe that the best thing is to go and work at a dog biscuit factory, and your best friend or your partner or your sister can believe that the best thing is to go work at a circus, and you can still love each other, and you could still, come together. You could still be friends. You could be completely opposite. It works with politics. It works with anything. You can still love that person despite their choices, and you could still find common ground. And Owen and Zoe, they never, ever were angry at each other. They were always respectful, and I think that's a good lesson to learn.
Fantastic. I will pass that on. And I don't know how much will he, follow, but let's see.
I'll try. Sorry.
but it's okay. This is a very interactive session we are having, and because it's a family movie and it's meant to be enjoyed, and very few things which a group of a family can enjoy. Now, with the advent of Amazon, Netflix, all these streaming platforms, there is very little content available for the regular family movie goer. And it's becoming smaller. It's not becoming bigger, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If you look at Marvel, DC, we can always debate, but the content for kids is not that much what it used to be before.
It isn't. Everything, when we're looking online, everything on Netflix and Amazon and HBO is TVMA. You see a superhero TV show like Doom Patrol, and it's TVMA. You see Daredevil and Luke Cage, and it's TVMA. And Deadpool is rated R. And you're going, and I understand that people want something that's more adult, but I don't feel like it's being equally served. Now, the Marvel movies were great for that, and kudos to them for keeping it PG-13. But I like my Superman to be the Christopher Reeve Superman. I like him to be that hopeful, kind of Superman. And I'd love to see more of that. I want to create more family content that's not speaking down to kids. It's just fun. That's all I'm looking for. Is I'm not looking to talk down to anybody. I just want to create something fun.
Great, superb. Well, the next question is, share your experiences with the casting process, the cast itself. You have a heavy duty cast in a small movie like this. I mean, you have Magneto, you have Jack Ryan, you have Mary Poppins, I
got the Penguin with Danny DeVito,
Penguin, so how do you deal with such a big cast in a project which is not that big exactly, and how did you end up casting people?
How I dealt with it was Xanax. That's how I got through that. But, the casting has to go. Credit has to go to Jamie Thomason, my good friend and casting director, and Curtis Kohler. They pulled off a miracle. We had our original budget was $11 million, and it was going to be a direct to DVD movie. And we had.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm serious. It was just a direct
DVD movie.
It's my first movie. We weren't expecting to go theatrical. We weren't expecting, and so I had two names two voices in my head when I was writing it, and the others, no voice came to mind. But Ian McKellen was always Horatio. I just heard it in his voice, and Brock was always Patrick Warburton. So those were the names that were always just in my head. So Jamie had worked with Patrick several times, and he says, we shouldn't have a problem. He's within our budget. We should be okay. He says, we might be able to get Ian McKellen. Our budget's really low, but we could spend like 80% of our budget and try to get Ian McKellen and see. And I said, well, let's just reach out. And he says, if Ian McKellen says no, which is a complete possibility because we're nobody, I've never made a film before, and Blue Dream Studios had no name in Hollywood. And he says, let's put some other names in there. And so he put some requests for Danny DeVito, for Ian McKellen, or for Sylvester Stallone, and Raven Simone and whatnot. And we waited a few weeks, and suddenly Ian McKellen said yes. And we were like, oh my God, I can't believe Ian McKellen's going to be in our little movie, this little direct-to-DVD movie. And a day later, Sylvester Stallone said yes. Before we were able to tell the agents, no, okay, we got our one big name. Then Danny DeVito said yes, and Raven Simone said yes. And so we went, oh no, we've got to either tell them no, which I really didn't want to do, or I've got to go back to my investors and ask them for more money. And so I went to my investors in China, and they said yes, and they gave us more money so we could do the cast. Then my casting, Jamie said, I'm going to run a name by you for Owen. He says, John Krasinski. I said, I've never heard of him. It was 2014. I'd never seen The Office. And, it was just, he had only really done The Office and maybe a couple small parts here or there. And I just didn't know. He goes, trust me. He's really funny. I said, okay, I trust you. I mean, look what you've done. We got Sylvester Stallone, Danny DeVito, Ian McKellen, Patrick Warburton. I trust you. So I flew from Nashville to Los Angeles for our first session. It was Danny DeVito and Raven Simone on one day and John Krasinski on the next day. And Danny and Raven were amazing. And then I go to meet John Krasinski, and he's just very friendly. He's just telling me he loved the script, it says, etc. And we did our first session, and he was amazing. I the minute he spoke, I knew he was Owen. And we hadn't cast Zoe yet, and he says, hey, he goes, I just want to let you know. He says, my wife loved your script. She just thought it was wonderful. Now, I didn't know who he was. So of course I didn't know who he was married to. So I just said, thank you. And I walked out of the room. And fortunately the microphones were hot, and Jamie heard from inside. He comes running in. He says, would your wife want to be in the movie? And I'm wondering, why is Jamie asking this poor man if his wife wants to be in the movie? And So he says, yeah, he picks up his phone, he texts Emily, and Emily replies, yeah. And so he goes, yeah, she's in. And that's how Emily Blunt came on the film, was just dumb luck, you know? And I mean, fortunately, someone was listening to our conversation.
I'm sorry to intervene. I would hardly call it dumb, from any conceivable imagination. I think you've taken so much of time to building this whole project. And now in 2020, these guys are already very big stars.
Yeah.
And, that ultimately went to your own benefit, that you have, I can tell you one thing, that, Scott, the digital and the streaming business, the OTT platforms, as they call it in India, over the top, platforms, which is basically the name for Netflix and Amazon in industry here in India. And what they've done is that they have literally made the world flat. Like, we are now looking at simultaneous releases of films in New Delhi and New York at the same time.
Wow.
Like, you are seeing all these on, we have like close to, I think some 4 or 5 million, I think 2 to 4 million subscribers of Netflix in India, and it's growing rapidly. And
wow.
India has a population of around 1 billion people, and you never know how big this can become, because India is not totally wired with 4G internet. And I think one of the benefits is that now whatever you are doing is for a global audience in the right sense, because now distribution is empowered to your device. So you really don't have to go to a theater or a festival or a drive-in in the US, I remember, or any of these things only. You can just do that at your laptop screen or your home, entertainment system. And this is really very, very unique, the way, you have told us about your journey. And just now, a little bit about Off Track from Animal Crackers.
Yeah.
Now, Scott, tell me, what would be the 5 films you would recommend your Indian fans in animation they should watch?
All right. I really love the new Spider-Man Into the Multiverse. Wow. I thought that was really good. Iron Giant is another one that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. I love that one. Despicable Me 2. I remember seeing that and thinking it was the perfect film. They hit every beat perfectly. So that is 3. The Little Mermaid is another one of my favorites.
Classic.
And so that's 4. And I'm trying to think if there's any. I'm sure I'm going to think of something afterwards and I'm going to go, oh, I should have said this. But this one's out of left field, but I remember my wife and I loved it when it first came out, was The Brave Little Toaster.
Is that available anywhere online?
It's a very odd film. It was about a toaster who, goes to find its owner. But yeah, you should be able to find it somewhere. But it was called The Brave Little Toaster, and it was really cute. It was just a very cute. It was probably in the late 80s, early 90s that it came out. But
I need to Google this, but I love the name. I would love to have a T-shirt that says "The Brave Little Toaster."
Yep. It was such. I haven't seen it in probably 30 years, but it was such a cute movie, and give it a shot. Tell me what you think of it. Well, I wonder if it still holds up.
Yep. And our final question is: what is your message to Indian fans? Anything you love about Indian films? Anything about Indian entertainment? Or would you like to give a message to our Indian fans?
I think it's funny. I was asked by DreamWorks maybe 20 years ago to write an Indian film, and I wrote it with my buddy Kevin Grievous, who did Underworld, and it never came out, but it was called Bollypop. And so I think it was about an elephant who wanted to become a Bolly dancer, and it was just such a fun story that
just never got played.
It's still sitting there. But I loved the dancing. I love the art of it, and I love the colors, and I think I would love to do something with that. And I think you guys have such an amazing culture. And
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I would.
Although I would call myself, as when it comes to motion picture and entertainment, I'm more American, frankly.
Yeah.
But I would say, yes, the art forms are unique. And
Yeah.
Scott, just a little word about this channel. This is Filmi Baniya, which is my podcast, and we started around 2 years ago. And we have interviewed, see, the vision of this podcast is to bring the global voices and global content for Indian audience. And we had Michael Uslan as our first guest, who was the executive producer of all Dark Knight and Batman films, and the man who brought the Cape Crusader to the big screen. Then we just recently did an interview with Dirk Maggs. He directed the audiobook of Sandman, Neil Gaiman's.
Nice.
We did with Audible in DC. And the third we did with an Israeli director called Rotem Shamir. He made this show called Fauda. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix.
No.
It's a big rage, F-A-U-D-A, Fauda. It's an Israeli show. And it's streaming on Netflix. You can find it. But in India, it's a very big rage. And
nice.
You are our latest interview. And it is such a pleasure to, interact with you in this session. And
my pleasure.
To our viewers, it's a great interview with Scott, who's shared with us in really frank and very, very, candid way about his journey. And the good thing is that Animal Crackers is available on Netflix India, and you can go and type Animal Crackers and you will get it on your own. And it's a great, nice movie and a great family outing. And on behalf of all my viewers across India, Middle East, and even in the US, Scott, many thanks for coming. And it's such a pleasure to interact with you. And we'll be airing this interview within 2 weeks, and we'll send you the link once it's done.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Scott.